Hello. All right. Um, I just have a couple of things I wanted to um, go into, and I didn't recognize it. I just have this stuff floating above my head, or should I say, somewhere in my head. And I don't know, like it's good to focus on a given thing and see where it leads us. So, like today I was um, watching something on YouTube, and I've noticed how the commercials are, and I've noticed for a while, have become more. Basically, the commercials are more. There's there's just more of them. So like you you're watching something, and then uh, you have a commercial, and eventually have a chance to skip it. But then there's another commercial, and another one. So it's kind of like a Trojan horse kind of a thing, or it's like another example would be like the Russian egg, where you open it and there's like a smaller egg, and it just you know some kind of a thing like that. Um, uh, you know, being a boomer, like I remember like watching TV, and we had commercials, and you know a given um, a given program is sponsored by a particular thing. So it's like brought to you by the sponsor, your sponsor, and so on. And Kellogg's cereal, and I mean we live with it. It just so like and this was like I mean if you go back to the 50s or whatever, but like for me, I was my formative years were in the 70s, like so I can kind of think about that, like so what was going on in the 70s. There's just too much to talk about it on here. uh what, during the Carter years, you know Nixon years, you know um we're getting out of the Vietnam War, and uh, there seemed to have been at one time, the consensus was that we have to go to war, and I think that near the near the end of Nixon's presidency, it was like, no, we don't want this war, and I would like to maybe do some kind of research on this, like you look at commercials and programming, when the consensus was like there was more there was a larger percentage of Americans who believed that we had to go to war in Vietnam, and then you could see how eventually that started to um, I mean the our impetus for this war. I mean, I think it was like getting weaker, near the end of his presidency, and so like anyways, so like it was probably middle end. Um, you could argue and say, well, no, it was losing traction uh, near the end of LBJ's, Lyndon Johnson's. I don't know. So, but looking at the details of it is something that I could do later. But just the overall idea that what was um, the media like when we were still like headstrong in this whole thing about Vietnam, and going to war, we have to do it, and then like then look at programming as a desire for this, falls by the wayside, and it's sort of like, well, let's keep up, let's keep face, but the cracks are showing, and so like I think that you could see. um, I can't say anything. Trying to remember from the top of my head, like, but I, I would suspect that with programming, like I remember watching MASH, and and that was like a big deal. Like now, like Mash is like, it's you look at it now, it's like I had a friend say who's younger than me. He was like, "Oh, I don't like Mash. It kind of depresses me." And and I don't know. I think he said something like it's all everything is like brown and green. And so if you look at the color palette of Mash, it's all brown and green and red. Operating room. Uh, the uh, so and and so military getting an interruption here. Interruption. I have pop-ups. I'm still trying to control pop-ups. But what MASH? It's an acronym for what? Um, Military Army Surgical Hospital or something like that. But military, yeah, uh, Mobile Army Surgical Hospital, military armor. So anyways, when you watch the movie, when you watch the series, I mean, first it starts out with the the pilot, which was a full length feature movie, and that was successful, and that alone, like if you go back and watch the movie Mash, and then the series, um, like so it was kind of like it expressed our concern about war in general. Like we're done with this war because like so that was set in Korea when we were at war with Korea. It was a Korean War, not Vietnam War, and it was a perfect setup for you know that series because I think that Vietnam was still going on, and so it was too close to home, and so you got to, and that's what's so interesting how like so you have to do that. You're making this about a different war so that you don't hit too close to home. I mean, there's people dying in Vietnam as they're making MASH, as they're showing, as people are watching MASH. And, kids like me, growing up, I was alive during the Vietnam War. I just wasn't in it, thank God. And I mean, like, it was like when I was growing up, it was cool to like poke fun at the warmongers, you know, and like so like you have Frank Burns, you know, and you have like that nurse, Hot Lips, uh, and so so Burns and Houlihan they're in bed together, they're both married, they're committing adultery, right? I think that she was married. We know Frank was, and he was just he was an army nerd. He was just a turd, and then you have like these surgeons who are like they're putting the bodies back together. So like they're in a war, and the surgeons are busy patching up these young bodies, and then to go back out and be split up or destroyed again. So it's kind of like you get that whole metaphor for, a new kind of hero. It's like the story is like the doctors are the real heroes of the war, and so the whole thing about the glory of war, especially with America, you know, and its track record, and like the best we've had it was during World War II, and I'm not a war specialist or anything, and but I mean the basic idea is that yeah we did pretty good in World War II, and thank God it's over, you know, and so then so but then Korea it was kind of like it wasn't so black and white, and then Vietnam it was totally like fuck man what a stupid fucking war, and so you could see that in like the programming, like with MASH it's a perfect example where you have like I mean, I was an impressionable kid, it's like, yeah, I kind of like idolized the Hawkeye and his friend. They were both like, they'll pop up again. I can't. I'll have to deal with it some other time. So, so they're, you know, they're like the ones that you look up to, like, like, wow, it's like, and you see how Pierce loses it once in a while, and how they gang up on Frank Burns, and all that. Anyways, I'm just so it's like, it was like the cool thing is to like question that kind of narrative, the narrative of war, going to war, and I don't know about commercials, so but there had to be some commercials, even like a lot of like war movies were like, we're not really happy about this war, like you have like Oliver Stone did 3 movies about the dealing with the Vietnam War, and I guess the most popular one of the 3 is Platoon, and so you watch that and it's just like, yeah, this ain't cool, there's the other movie, there's another one, uh, different film uh, maker as I mean, it was the Deer Hunter, and so I mean, I grew up with that kind of, in that kind of atmosphere, that kind of environment. Like, war is not a good thing, and like we're evolving, we're getting better at this human experiment, um, I don't know if I don't so like and so and we had our fair share of commercials. And it just seemed like um, life then wasn't so monetized. I guess that's what I want to get into. And but I think that people who like we like so Noam Chomsky said we actually won the Vietnam War, which I know we lost, Um, but Noam Chomsky, who yeah was on in the Epstein files, that really fucked me up. You know, I was reading his books and I was like defending, my position using Noam Chomsky as a source. Um, God, this could go anywhere. I can take this any fucking where. Uh, but the main topic, I'm trying to find a main thread or of a topic, and then going that way, so I'm not just all over the place. So it was about commercials, and so YouTube has a lot more commercials. Not only YouTube, Tubi also, I think, has more commercials. Um, I tend to get bit by invisible critters, like my sister does too. They're like I think they're fruit flies, and but also I'm finding out that because of your diet, you start breaking out and you itch and you feel like you're being bit by something, but really it's just an itch because of your body reacting to something that you're eating. And so I tend to do this kind of thing, and I don't know if that's I don't know. I'm watching myself talk right now, and it's kind of annoying. I'm annoying myself, scratching. I don't know. Anyways, so when I was growing up, like we had commercials, and you'd be able to go and I'd go and get a Carnation breakfast bar, which they're gone now. They've been gone since the '80s. And okay, now Poor Man is back on. Me and the whole family would get together. Oh, we're gonna watch Rich Man Poor Man. And oh, commercial. Okay, I'd go and get like a Carnation breakfast bar and a milk. Okay, time to go back and okay, and we're watching this. But so the commercials. I mean, I don't know how banal they were in terms of like how much, you know, but I don't know if there's any stand-up comedians that made any joke about commercials. And if I were doing stand-up now, I'd probably want to get in there and rip on the amount of commercials that we are having. But the hairpin I gotta have 2 things kind of working off of each other. So now I'm talking about commercials, but I'm also talking about war. And I kind of want to see if I can somehow bring these 2 things together. And I think I can because it's about money making. So, like with the Vietnam War, Noam Chomsky said that we won the war. And I was like, huh? And so like I think I remember his premise was because that's what the American Empire wanted. It wanted to get into this war because when you look at the engine that fuels our economy, there's a lot of consumption going on with us, and so a couple of things have to take place is getting us addicted to the services that we're buying into, and you have to have advertisement to keep us locked in, and the things that are produced need investors. You need people with money to get involved in this, and I mean this is what capitalism is, and so somehow any threat to that has to be dealt with, and so that's one level of why we went to Vietnam is because of the communist threat. And I think John F. Kennedy, when he first started, he was all against Vietnam, and he was against communism and all this, but it didn't take long for him to like sort of like change his attitude. I mean, I think he died a capitalist, but he was more like the conscientious type of capitalist. So I've learned a couple of things that there's different kinds of capitalism, not just one capitalism. There's different kinds of capitalism, and and so this kind of ties in with what I think during the '70s we were still experiencing a certain kind of a capitalism that is no longer with us today. So the capitalism I'm talking about is more of a customer based kind of capitalism, and how it's sort of somehow is conscious of the average person, like the worker, the average family, unit. Where today that's shifted. But I wanted to stick with okay commercials. So you have the reason why one was I was talking about how you have to like protect capitalism and the interest, and so because of the market, and all these things that we're being hooked onto with the aid of commercials, you got to have Calgonite. I was just watching an old, I was watching it. I don't know how, uh, I found an old commercial, and it was like this girl goes to this the cleaners, and she's picking up her stuff, and she's like, wow, you get these so clean, what's your secret? Well, and the guy is Chinese. He's like, come here, it's an ancient Chinese secret. It's an ancient Chinese secret. But the wife is like, yeah, some hotshot ancient Chinese secret. It's Calgon. I think it's Calgon. And it's like you don't even think about it because like Calgon it's not the thing that you use to wash the clothes. That you have your regular detergent plus the Calgon to clean your clothes better. And this went over my head when I was in the '70s. When I know that's what came out in the '60s, the '70s or maybe '80s. I think it was a '70s commercial. It was like perfect in how it just slips that right under your nose. Like, wait, I have to have this box of powder so that this box of powder, which is detergent, will wash my clothes. Why in the fuck can't you just have this box of powder wash my fucking clothes and not me having to buy this other product that goes with it? That's the kind of thing. That's the kind of thing that, if anything, like so, like I make videos. It's like a hobby. The one thing is that what do I want people to get out of my videos is just to be aware of that and question it. Why in the freak is this thing requiring this other thing for this thing to work? Just make this thing work in the first place, right? So, anyways, so you have like okay, so back to the '70s and to get that commercial, among others. So, but another thing that's going on also is we also know now that people are making money off the war. Big, big time investors, and so today, weapons manufacturing is a global, entity. It's a monster, and and like I don't know the history of equity firms, but today we also have equity firms, and I want to get into defining, what that is, really quickly. Well, basically, I'm looking it up here. It's like, so you have private equity firms. Well, so the private equity firms, what it's like in the way it's defined, it's like it's to incentivize the increased profit of the business. It's like, God, that just sounds like such bullshit. But that's what it's. But obviously, it has to do that. But then what they do is then they sell the business later, like 5 years down the line, then they're going to sell that business later. Now, a private equity firm did that to Toys R Us. Well, they changed it and then they sold it, and then well now it's gone. So they fucked it up. And I did make a video on that. But like a private equity, like what's that? Well, that's private, meaning it's not public. That means, from my understanding, is like it, you can we can small time people can't invest in it. It's not for the general public. It's like private equity, okay, is stock in a private company that does not offer stock to the general public. Instead, it is offered to specialized investment funds and limited partnerships. And um, so there it is. So I mean, what does that mean? It means that um, a lot of things that are happening around you and beneath your feet have nothing to do with you, right? So, like, again, and I've said this before, if you work for a paycheck, you're not a capitalist. Okay. So, you know, so again, anyways, back to, okay, so we know now you can make money off these wars. And so, Noam Chomsky, Vietnam War, we won the war. Yeah, because the people who are like millionaire, billionaire up there and they're investing in this, it's like they don't get hurt. And like, I don't think a lot of the politicians, presidents, I don't think their sons are serving in these wars. And so you have that. So and that was a different capitalism then. So cut to today, we're we're seeing war all over the place. Like with so Israel is it's genocide, with Gaza. It's a gen. I mean, how can you laugh after saying the word genocide? I don't know. I must be sick in the head. Okay, you were warned. So the genocide in Gaza. I'm just gonna So it's like I can get in trouble for just saying that. Okay, it looks like one. Let's say I didn't call it that. It looks like something is going on there that starts with a G and ends with an E. Okay, so I'm just saying. So we have that. You have like uh, Iran. What's going on? It's like the talks are, there's no more peace talks. Okay, um, July 8th. No more peace talks, and like Trump is calling them scum. And okay, anyways, and so we have that, and now he's talking about wanting to take um, Greenland. So what's going on here is, I think, part of a bigger picture. And so it's kind of like this thing where I think that we're in what's called a late stage capitalism. And so one of the things is, if you look at it back, if you go back to the home base, it's like you look at us, everything is becoming more monetized. And that's the incentive, to maximize profit. And with these equity firms and with and it's becoming just all about to invest for investing. And so, and it's affecting, so like watching some program on Tubi or YouTube, and these commercials, it's like, if yeah, what, nobody invests in YouTube or Google, nobody invests in any of these things. So there has to be this connection to where, like, why do you have to make so much more money? And it's like, because it's increasing the number of these six-figure income people. I call them middle management. And so middle management, I think, could be a bigger problem than the upper management, because if there was, like, how could you have a war if you have no soldiers willing to fight the war, right? So we have that. And like, so how could you have a drug cartel if nobody wants to push your product, right? So yeah, you're the big kingpin, you're ready to, rile the world with you know, your product, but no one wants to push it, for whatever, moral reasons or whatever reasons. You can't get off the ground, your business of dealing drugs. So, and so it's also the same thing with, our current, capitalist model. And so it's like, and I'm not a communist per se. A couple of my videos talks about communism, and I did make, reference to what sounds like a favorable quote by Karl Marx, but I'm not going to get into that. He talks about more about, you know, it's not about your ability, it's about your needs. That's what he was. That's the quote. You know, so and it's not even our ability anymore. Like so like capitalism is like, oh, if you're able to do the job, you get it. It's that's been changed. So it's more like if you're able to be willing to be fucked up the ass, you'll get the job, and you'll smile all the time. And so what happens is you can't show any modicum of humanity. Like so, and like the social media is being used against you if you complain. So now you're a Karen, you know? And so this is something that has to be looked at. Like, so, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff now where people are fighting each other and in the streets and it's like, I'm just looking at the same class attacking each other. That's how I see this, so, um, and I also see that everything is becoming a freaking commercial. And yeah, there's more commercials, and there's the encroachment of more war. Like it's surrounding us. It's like the zeitgeist is one of war. I mean, we have Pete Hegseth changing the Department of Defense, which is a better name for a more democratic society, an open society than the Department of War, which it's like the idea. So like the ideals that I had when I was growing up is, yeah, someday maybe we don't need war, someday we don't need soldiers, someday we don't need police. Like we've all learned and somehow grandfathered out these bad genes, you know but the genes are back, or they never left, or they've mutated into something even more sinister because there's more commercials, and there's all these gig jobs. Like, and we don't have pensions anymore. My dad had a pension, and he never had a higher education, and so now people have to get a higher education to barely afford what my dad had without one. I'm 62, so kind of gives you some perspective here. And so, and there was like only four billionaires back in the 70s. It was like 3 or 4 billionaires. One was Howard Hughes, who's still alive, but now there's like just check it out. I'm not going to hide it. I'm looking stuff up as I go. How many billionaires do we have in the United States alone today? 989 billionaires today. How many billionaires did we have in the United States in 1974? Fewer than 5 individual billionaires. Now just think about this. Got those numbers? Okay. Um, how is your basic life going? Do you? So the thing is, we are not able to remember the past, and so if you could remember, if let's say you never aged, so if you're at you know 23 in 1974, and you're now 23 today in 26, 2026, you would and your memory is pretty good. Like you're okay, you're a fucking vampire, okay? He's like you have a higher vampires I think are more intelligent than mortals, and I think they have better fashion sense, and and you know and they're close to being immortal. So you're a vampire, and you just need a little blood to get you going. You're not interested in investing or anything. Anyways, you're just a vampire. Well, anyway, you're like you know, so like you have a good memory, like photographic. You're really smart, and you remember like if it was all yesterday. Like you're like grandpapa from the Munsters. Okay, you're grandpapa from the fucking Munsters. Okay, and you're like, yeah, I remember back in the day. So like you would know that things have changed, and so and so I think that we are have changed, as a society. Our capitalism that we live in now is not the same. Like it's the mask is off. They're taking the mask off, and so like yeah, during the Nixon years, like you get thrown in jail for 10 years if they find you with a nickel bag of pot or even a joint. I get that, and so that kind of thing was sort of like pushed out into the periphery a little bit when we had Jimmy Carter. But then no more Jimmy Carter, and we have Reagan, and then it was like the Nancy Reagan's war on drugs. Now I'm picking on drugs. I mean, I remember a time when like we would get pulled over by the cops, and it was Nixon was gone, and so it was Carter was president. And I remember the police would like give us what you got, and then get home right now. If I catch you again, you will be a. It's like then you'll get in trouble. So the cops were usually like hey, oh yeah, yeah, give me that, get home, we're gonna call your parents, that kind of a thing, and the parents would take care of it and beat us or whatever, and that kind of worked for me, I grew up in the suburbs, but I don't know, like, okay, I'm not getting into like law enforcement or anything. I'm not a professional, whatever. But anyway, so but like so so like they had, and then like when you look at that, like the whole war on drugs, and then you learn about Gary Webb, who worked for the the Mercury newspaper. That was the name of the newspaper. And so like he made connections between how drugs were being uh, sold, distributed, you know, in the U.S. and people in lower, uh, income sectors of society, like where they lived, they got their getting their hands on it, and is killing each other, dying, getting addicted, and somehow there's a connection between that and the CIA, like with cocaine, and I think and also heroin. And Gary Webb is like he was like one of the first reporters to connect the government working with drug dealers, and there's a lot of different reasons why, but like when you start looking at like how sinister our governments or people can be, it almost makes sense that, well, okay, we didn't plant the seeds and start sowing the shit, but somehow this circulation of drugs is happening and it can't be stopped, and certain people are getting hit the most. And yeah, we're talking black communities. Okay, I'll just come out and say it. And this was then, and so like he was, and then eventually he commits suicide. It's like, well, that he was harassed by the government, do this or else, and then he offs himself, and it's so basically, um, I will have to keep going, but I got to cut this short. So basically, you would think that by now we would have evolved, but now everything has gotten like worse. So it's like now instead of heroin or marijuana, which marijuana is not legal, and why? Because you can make money off it. It's like, oh well, why not? I think that's the incentive. Is like we can it's taxable. It has to be. Why? And it can also alleviate the pain of living a job. You're living your job. You have multiple jobs and I see videos of people, they sleep in their car and then they wake up and they change just like outside of their car, and then they go to work and they have put on the suit. And so what's happening is the American dream isn't even owning a house anymore. It's just like, well, okay, I got my car. It's a nice car. It's a brand new car, or it looks shiny, and you work and you're sleeping in your car. And one guy said, "Oh yeah, I have an RV," and that was the best. So now he works, but he lives in his RV. And so, but also now we have fentanyl and meth and all that, and and we have a lot more commercials, and we don't have any like retirement package like some people do. But it just seems like you have to make a lot more money just to have what people who didn't have a higher education did in the 70s. And there's a lot of commercials, you know, and and it's like you're a commercial. And so now like even me, I'm a commercial. I'm making this video. I mean, and I put it on YouTube and well, I only got like 20 hits. It's been a year versus well, I got like, 2 million hits. It's been a year. Which one would I prefer? So basically, um, I'm basically part of the problem, you know, because maybe I should like I don't know if I even made a point across, but I think that somehow this could lead into the next thing that I want to make a video about, and that is can you successfully change a large number of people using social media? And I don't like okay, I'm just saying like if we don't like okay, like so cities are buy I made a video about cities buying uh cities are being sold. They're selling parts of our cities are being sold and bought by foreign companies and also by equity firms. I think BlackRock and that they're they're just a huge investing firm. And they're a huge investment firm. They're not private equity yet, but they're huge. Like so, like I can even look it up. Like, what is BlackRock defined as? So I have to end this. It's an American multinational investment management corporation, the world's largest asset manager. So an asset, what's an asset? We all have one, right? No, it's just like something that is uh, made into you buy into it, and it could be uh, invested. And so um, everything is being made an asset. All your services, everything is an asset for making money. And so it's like, okay, well, what is an asset? An asset is any resource with economic value to an individual, corporation, or country owns or controls with the expectation that it will provide a future benefit. Now, benefit, like, so what's benefit? Like, hey, we have this, we have this little thing, you know, and this little thing, if you take it once a day, you know, you will not get inflammation or you won't, there's no chance of you getting Alzheimer's or cancer or whatever, that's a benefit. Or, no one will get cholesterol, high cholesterol if you take this thing every day, just a little thing every day, you know. Well, then what about the medical industry? What about the pharmaceuticals and insurance companies and all that? Wouldn't that cause that whole stack of cars to collapse? So what is benefit? You start thinking that benefits is in this case is it's benefits in terms of investment to make money. It's all about making money. Now, do I hate money? Well, I don't like what it's become because I could sure use more of it, but I might not like what it has become. And so like it because it like so we are incentivized by making a lot of it at the cost of a lot of other things. I'm playing with stuff as I talk. But so it's to a point where it can't just keep going the same. Like we can't continue going where we're going. We did back like 40 years ago today. It's like so we can't have another 40 years of this. So now we have more wars coming. I don't think it's the end of the wars. I think, folks, it's the beginning of a huge onset of wars. And the only people who benefit are going to be the people who cause the wars and the banks and stuff is all connected to it. And it's just common sense because, like, if you look at the number of billionaires that we have now versus when we had the Vietnam War, you could see how it's just increasing. So whatever it is that we're doing, we're succeeding for this 1% or less than 1%. And so, now everything is like a commercial. So, but I was saying that for my next video, I want to talk about like can we use the very thing that I'm using, YouTube, and I see me as a commercial because like if I had a million views versus 10, I'd be happier. Might even be able to make some money off it, right? So that's an incentive for me to do this in the hopes that I make money. And then like so you have that, and so we're always so so I had this idea that how could we if we needed to have a revolution, I never got into why we need one for this segment, but let's say that we needed one. Could YouTube be the like manifesto board on which we put our grievances and everyone, yep, let's do this. Could we do that? And so that's the question. And so I don't know, I hope maybe I can follow through on this and talk about that, but I might have to end it here.